that she was going to terminate her child, but she chose to keep it because of the fear of how she would feel afterwards, and would she have that support? Would she be able to cope with the decision? And so to hold that space through that session, that was wonderful.
Yeah, wow.
And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday about abortions. I was telling her I was, coming on to have a conversation with you. And just, we're talking about how, pregnancy is a wonderful thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a wonderful thing, bringing a child into a life, and you learn so much from them. But also, I feel like as a parent, we also have a huge responsibility to discuss the multitude of the situation if you were to become pregnant. Do you know what I mean? Because I remember as a child, my father saying to me, I had a brother as well, and he would say, Simon would have, girls over to the house, but I wasn't allowed, you know what I mean? Guys weren't allowed to come up to my bedroom. And my dad would say, well, what is the worst thing you could do? And I said, no. And he said, well, you could get pregnant. So when I became pregnant, that was another thing that fed into my story, was I'd let my dad down.
Yeah.
He was so disappointed because the worst thing I could have done was to be pregnant. But we never had the conversation. We never had the conversation of, well, if you became pregnant, you would have to you've got three choices. Either the first one is you would keep the child, you would maybe give it up for adoption, or you might have to make one of the biggest decisions in your life, would be to have an abortion and to discuss the impact of that on your life. Yeah. Because it is a frigging massive. I can, as we spoke before about the many decisions and the many reasons why people, have to have a termination, whether we talked about the health of the fetus or the health of the mother, sometimes even having to make that choice. Can you imagine, if you know that you were going to maybe something was going to happen to the health of you and you still had to make that choice, it would still be the same feelings that are coming up, isn't it? It's still that loss of a child.
And it's almost like a catch-22 as well, that if you have the child, then have that impact on your health and your mental health. But then if you choose to abort it, what sort of feelings will that give you that you have to carry?
I know. And I was adopted, and I remember having the conversation with my dad once. It's so funny. You just realize it all links in. There's a reason for everything. I believe things happen for you very much. And so, I just had a little bit of a light bulb moment then. I remember saying to my dad, so the reason that Doreen chose to adopt a child, is that because she couldn't have children? And my dad said, no, it was because of her health. Okay. She actually had a heart condition, and they said to her, if you fall pregnant, you will be spending all of your time in the hospital. She had a heart condition. She had, it was in the 70s, something to do with the valves, and she had to have them replaced. So pretty epic operation, because I think he spoke about her being in a bath of ice when she came back through. So that just shows you how old school it was.
Yeah.
And so she chose not to have a child because of the impact it would have been on her health. But obviously desperately wanted to have a child, because she ended up having the adopting us.
Yeah.
So it all links in, doesn't it? It's like she put herself first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of the impact on her own health.
Yeah. And also I find that interesting as well, you bringing out the topic of being able, having to educate. I guess it would start in childhood about, the impacts of becoming pregnant, because even becoming a parent, before you become a parent, you don't know what bigger responsibility that is going to be and how that's going to impact and change your life as well. It's definitely.
And there's so many discussions, isn't there? It's funny, isn't it? All the things that you think, if only we'd had that conversation earlier. But there's also that thing of would you listen at that age as well? But I was speaking to another friend this morning, again, always talking about it. And I asked her that question. I said, did your mother ever speak to you about the impact of falling pregnant? She said she did, actually. And she said it did stick in her mind. She did realize the impact. So, for me that, and I realize now I am responsible, do you know what I mean? It's, I think I knew that if you have sex that that there's a chance that you could fall pregnant. I wasn't that ignorant, but I don't think I realised the impact of the decision I would have to make if I had fell pregnant. Do you know what I mean? And maybe if we had have had that conversation, I don't know, do I? But from having the conversation with my friend this morning, who did have the conversation with her mum, she did say that it was always in the back of her head.
I wonder how much, maybe not how much, but how many women who've chosen to have an abortion after already having children, because you know, you would already have an understanding of what it's like to raise a child at that point, compared to being a first-time mum and falling pregnant, and then, you know, being able to understand the you know, the impact of those decisions. I think those experiences as well.
Yeah. Maybe because, you know, I guess before I had children, I guess I hadn't really thought about the impact of giving a child up for adoption. Whereas now, you know, having 2 children, the thought of giving a child away, I don't think I could. And also now that I've gone through, obviously, having children, the thought of having to make that choice, if I had to, whether it was a medical or, you know, because I thought, oh, you know, because I'm 44 now, so the thought of having another child is just like, no, you know what I mean? I've kind of a age thing, but also, yeah, I just feel like, you know, I'm choosing not to have any more children. So if I ever had to make that choice, you know what, I guess it's hard to say unless you're there, isn't it? And but I know now that I would never ever want to put myself in that position again. So I would choose to take precautions and not to get in that position in the first place. Yeah. However, no matter who walks into my clinic space, whether you've had 1 abortion, I had a lady once that had 5, which someone hearing this might just go, what? However, there is never ever any judgment from me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because I have not walked in your shoes. Yeah. I have not walked in your past. What I will do is I will hold that space for you, a safe, loving and supportive space so you can heal. Because I feel like that your well-being really, really depends on it. Yeah. You know, everyone has the right to heal from their experiences, no matter what you've done, no matter what your story is. Yeah. And I really would love that this topic, this conversation is kind of brought out from the dark ages and for women to heal. I've actually just signed up recently to an online course that a lady's doing, which is about 40 days of women healing for abortion. And I thought because of the work that I do, I'd actually do the journey as well. Yeah. And so we start that module this week, and it'll be really interesting to see what she can bring to the conversation as well, and the healing. And one of the things
the link with me so I can put it on the description.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah. Cool. And so it hasn't yet started yet. I just had a little bit of an intro to it. But yeah, it was, I just think that, because at first I was kind of thinking, well, how can you do an online course? You know, because it is such a personal thing. Yeah. But I wanted to do it because maybe that's something that I'll open up in the future. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So at the moment, I am putting it out. I've just done a flyer yesterday for a lady in Tasmania. I supported a lady over there who decided when she found out she was pregnant that she didn't want to have an abortion. So she went down the herbal route of doing it, which I'd never supported anyone through before. And so obviously I checked in and made sure she hadn't just Googled it. You know, she'd got the support over there already. Unfortunately, the herbs didn't work. So she ended up having to take the tablets, which did work. And so I think the whole procedure was actually quite a long time. And I just said to her, you know, wow, what a lot of courage you had to go down that route of dragging it out so long. Do you know what I mean? As painful as it was already. Yep. But she did say that the sessions really, really helped her to, from having those negative thoughts in her mind, of really knowing that she was doing the right thing for her. Yeah. Yeah. So when you open up it's interesting. Once I decided that this is the work that I wanted to do. And you know what? I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, you know, I did a video and I shared on Facebook that I had an abortion, and I did the video, and literally the next day I was going to post it, my back went. I couldn't even bend over. I was in so much pain. And I went to see my healer, and it was like, okay, so is this your judgment or judgment of others? And I realized it was not me. I'd healed from my experience, but it was more about, oh, what are other people going to think?
Yeah.
What are other people going to think that I'm supporting women that have had abortions? And it's, you know, it brought up all these other things for me to really sit and think about. And I did a whole session recently with my own kinesiologist around the healing around religion and having abortions. You know, I've got a goiter in my thyroid, and every time it was tapping into the thyroid, because she uses muscle testing as well, tapping into the thyroid if it had a voice. And it was all around, I know that I was, when I was adopted through the Church of Scotland. And so already at that very young age, I was carrying around, I realized it wasn't my mother's shame and judgment and guilt, but it was actually, sorry, I don't know if I said what I said then. It wasn't mine, but I was actually carrying my mother's, because it was to do with the church, you know, single mother, already had one child to another father. Do you know what I mean? And I realized that I'd taken that on as if it was my own.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? That whole thing of like, even in conception, that we can take on other people's emotions and feelings already. So the fact that that lady came in and was very aware of that, and we cleared that I think it's going to be a very powerful healing. That's another avenue that I hadn't even thought about before with, you know, the healing process. Yeah.
So how do you support women who do have a faith, a religious faith, and they feel like their faith goes against having an abortion? Part of
it's really interesting. Like, so I moved from Sydney to Newcastle maybe nearly a year ago now, and I'll be honest, I used to use the word universe, you know, connect to the universe, you know, like, oh, the universe is showing me signs. And I did actually, when I was younger, I used to go to church. You know, I was in the Brownies, I was in the Girl Guides, and they were always held in churches. And I used to go to Sunday school. I was also confirmed, and I chose to do that. I remember, you know, my parents didn't go to church. I asked to go, so they used to drop me off and blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, I guess things happen, you know, you get a bit older and it's not cool to go to church anymore. And I think also my grandmother that I was really close to had died. And so for whatever reason, I was probably in my head going, well, you know, if God loved me, you know, he's taken my mother's, and I didn't get it at that point. So obviously I moved away from the church. So anyway, I ended up meeting this really cool mum at the school, and I would say universe, and she'd go, God. And it always made me laugh, because I go universe, she'd go God. And then I kind of realised, I started to realise that it's actually the same thing.
Yeah.
And I realised I was really uncomfortable, though, with the word God, because I guess it's not cool. I don't actually know any one of my friends that actually goes to church. So that was quite interesting, even in itself. And then from that session that I talked about with the thyroid, I realised, how can I be a child of God if I have had a termination? How can... And then all these other things started to come up, you know, like, how can I have done this, this, and this in my life if I am a child of God? But you know what? I've always been really, really drawn to the image of Jesus and the Sacred Heart. I love the image, you know, even you see the tacky ones with the flashing lights, but I've always really liked it. I know it was really bizarre. Like a couple of weeks ago, I went into a charity shop and it was there. There's the Sacred Heart picture, and I was like, oh, I like it, but it's not quite the face of Jesus that I wanted. And I thought, oh, you know, they've got many different faces. And then I thought, oh, does the face matter anyway? So I thought, no, I'll just take it home. You know, been drawn to the picture. There's a reason it's there. So I grabbed the picture. And as I was just about to pay for it, there was another picture of Jesus. It was the face that I'd been looking for. And I said to the lady, I'll take that one. Anyway, I took it home, and I always connected to something, a voice, you know, and I always thought maybe it was my higher self, and I realize now, actually, I feel like I was connected to God, you know, and that wisdom that comes from deep within sometimes, and you think that is so profound, that would I have found that myself? So something is trying to communicate with me and give me this guidance. And so anyway, I had my brought home my picture of Jesus, and my kind of go-to place where I really kind of like to think and collect my thoughts is in the bathroom, in the shower. So I can lock the door and the kids aren't there. Do you know what I mean? And so anyway, I don't know why, but I felt the need